guys, welcome back. Today we're up on the roof in front of the Starlink pole. Starlink is Dishy McFlatface right above me here, about 4 feet above my head. And today in the Northwoods we're doing a little bit of adjustments. I want to bring the dish a little bit closer to the roof line. There was some concerns with perhaps some lightning issues and just overall height, and I think I could probably drop it down a little bit, but we'll see. I've got a shorter pole I'm going to install and bring the dish down a little bit further. But before I do that, I want to talk about a few things, kind of give a update on Starlink as a whole. Now, I ordered Starlink on December 10th, 2020, and I got it there shortly thereafter, maybe 5 days later. I think I ordered on a Thursday or Friday. I got it Tuesday or a Wednesday, and I've been using it nonstop ever since. I work from home, been working from home since March of 2020, when COVID hit, and right now I'm not sure when I'm going to be going back to the office. Maybe part-time at some point here this summer. Who knows? We're not really quite sure yet. But Starlink has been, I guess, a game changer for me on working from home, teleworking, teleconferences, streaming things, kids being able to stream, classes if they have to stay home and with classes and things. It's been really great. But before we get to the actual adjustment on the dish, I want to talk about kind of the things that have happened over the last almost 4 months now. And first I want to talk a little bit about the installation. If you haven't been here before, you haven't seen Starlink before, installation is really easy in my opinion compared to other things. Starlink sends everything in a box. It's a kit. They get the dish, they send a little tripod mount, and the dish has a hardwired 100-foot power Ethernet cable that runs from the dish to a power block in the house. So the job of the purchaser, you mount the dish anywhere you want outside, wherever there's a spot to have clear coverage to the sky, and then you got to run that powered Ethernet cable into the house. Next you plug in the power block in the house somewhere, and then on the other end of the power block there's another Ethernet port. You plug the second Ethernet cable into that port, and then plug the other end of the Ethernet cable into the router that is supplied. After that, you go log into your Starlink app, set up your Wi-Fi, and you're good to go, ready to go. And then you can go and add in, like I wired in a network switch, and you can see my installation in this video here. But I wired in a network switch, and then I have my work computer and my personal PC hooked up by Ethernet. Phones are all Wi-Fi, of course, and got laptops and tablets Wi-Fi. But that's my installation. The installation really is a breeze. The hardest part is finding a permanent spot if you want it to be permanent. In my case, I put it on a roof on a pole mount. They've got another roof mount that actually screws right to the roof surface, and I think they'll probably have a couple other mounts as well. I found the pole mount to be best. It gets a little bit above the roof because we have snow here. In this case, there's some winters there could be 2 to 3, 4 feet of snow in this particular location on the roof. So I need to get it up a little bit so that the snow doesn't interfere with the dish. There has been times where the dish network satellite dish had to be shoveled out a little bit. So that's the basics of the install. So Dishy McFlatface is a phased array antenna. I don't know the science behind it. I have a basic understanding of what's working in there. When you have a dish network or a DirecTV connection for TV, it's a single beam of whatever going up into the sky. It locks onto a satellite that is stationary over ground and sits in one place. Starlink does not work like that. Starlink, the phased array antenna, the way I understand it is there's many individual antennas in the face of the dish and the Starlink network, as it starts to rain a little bit, the Starlink network is a big constellation of satellites that are constantly moving over our heads. They're never in one spot over top of the earth. They're always moving. So with that, this satellite actually, it'll lock onto a satellite, follow it across the sky, and as it gets out of range, another part of the antenna will look back and find the next satellite. It may connect to 1 or 2, 3 satellites at one time. I'm not really sure how that works, but it is always moving the connection. So that's why when you use the app, there's a function on the app for your phone. You can look here and see what the required open space for viewing to the sky, kind of in our area, to the northwest. That's important to have that opening so that when the satellite leaves your coverage area, it can look back as far as it can to that direction and lock onto the next satellite that's moving into your area. So that's, if you have any obstructions, let's say if one tree comes up into the area or anything, any obstructions, that's why if you have issues with connection or other things like that, that obstruction might be causing those issues, because if it's in that way of that particular satellite moving overhead, you're going to lose connection. You won't be able to find another satellite to hook up to. So that's kind of the basics of the way the Starlink works. If you have a clear view to the sky, it works awesome. I haven't had any issues in my 4 months of obstructions in this particular setup here. I've been really consistent. There's been beta downtimes, but that's due to software changes and things like that. So let's talk about my experience with the Starlink internet connection. I've been working from home since March of 2020. From March through December, I was connected to the internet through Frontier DSL. Typically 5 to 6 megabyte download speeds, half a megabit, 5 to 6 megabit per second download speeds, and half to 0.8 megabit upload speeds. Very slow. It was hard to do sharing screens or anything like that. Upload speeds, I've got typically work with big files, so it took a long time to get things uploaded. Sometimes I'd have to go to the public library to get things uploaded. And then we got Starlink about December 15th of 2020. And I've used it nonstop for work ever since. I've got multiple teleconferences per week, typically uploading big data sets up to the internet, to the cloud, many times a week. And it's been pretty much, I wouldn't say flawless, because the first, I'd say up through February, December to February, mid-February, it would work really well, and then it just happened to be like if I was in the middle of a teleconference, all of a sudden there was some downtime. I think they're probably making a lot of big changes to the software within the satellites, within the dishes, who knows. And it'd be middle of the day, middle of my teleconference, and all of a sudden it dropped down for 2 seconds, 5 seconds, and then reconnect. Drop out for 5 seconds, reconnect. And perhaps it was even, maybe there was less connection to the satellites itself. So up through February, I kind of struggled. There were some times where teleconferences I'd have to jump from my wired Starlink connection, and I have to jump to my Frontier DSL Wi-Fi. I hung on to Frontier for up until about 2 weeks ago. But then in February, end of February, the connections got really, really stable. I could go a whole week without having connection issues during a teleconference or anything like that. It was really, really stable. Never really noticed anything. There was one day a couple weeks ago, I noticed it was like the full day. It was terrible for about 3-4 hours in the morning. But I probably think they're probably making software changes. I don't know. I'm not connected on that end because it's been really great since then. It stabilized a ton. I would have consistent connections, maybe a minute or two of beta downtime if you look in the app. A minute or two of downtime for a 12-hour period. So that was been really, really great. And now we're into March. The last 2 weeks have been awesome. They made some software changes apparently, and my speed had almost doubled. For the first maybe December through February, early March, I'd vary, between 50, 60 megabits per second download speed to 150 to 180. Typically around the 100 megabit download speeds. I'm getting over 200, 250, sometimes 340. megabit download speeds, megabit per second download speeds now, with uploads in the 20 to 30 megabit per second range. It's awesome. It's, you know, I haven't really noticed a difference, but seeing that is really nice. I mean, my kids can be watching Disney Plus or whatever, you know, streaming movies upstairs. My wife can be doing something. I can be working, have a teleconference, uploading a video to YouTube, and nobody really knows a difference. And with Frontier DSL, hell, like, you couldn't do that. You couldn't have two things going on at once, especially uploading. That would just kill that connection. Latency right now averaging between around 25, 28, 30-ish as a lower end, up to 40 to 50 milliseconds. I am perfectly okay with that. My DSL connection was 18 to 20, but the 30 to 50 has been fine for me. I'm not gaming hardcore or anything like that. I do know that they want to get it down in the 18 to 25 range at some point. I imagine once they get more ground stations set up and more satellites in the air, the more, maybe with the, I think there's going to be some laser connections between the satellites that will make things better. Better latencies. It hasn't been an issue for me. Okay, so let's get this Starlink Dishy McFlash face lowered a little bit. Right now I've got it unplugged in the basement, and because if you have it plugged in and you're moving around, it's going to try and reorient itself a little bit. So I'll get you set it up here, move the camera a little bit, and we'll get to work. Okay, so I'm going to cut my tape I have on here. Of course, it's starting to rain and I shouldn't be up here, but it's still fine. It's not downpouring, it's just light sprinkle. Cut this tape, and now I've got these pole mounts up on here. I get my tools out of my pocket. The pole mount, these are 7/16 bolts to hold them in there. So I'm going to pull the big pole off. Make sure my little pole doesn't go sliding down the hill. Okay. Now it can be kind of top heavy, so be careful. Well, I have this here. Reach down and I'm going to install my new pole. Alright, that's done. So I'm going to pull the Dishy off of the old pole. 7/16 wrench. Set this guy onto here. So get this secured so it doesn't go anywhere. Okay, I'm going to tighten my base down. And really, you just want to get it kind of level. You don't need to worry about like perfectly level, because again, this dish orients itself. It's really slick that way. So I'm going to tighten this guy up. Tighten the top bolt. Right now I'm just experimenting because I think we can get away with this low. I actually haven't even checked the app, but I assume as you add more satellites, the better it'll be. The benefit of not cutting this original pole is I can always put it back up to where it was. So we'll tighten this guy down. Get him finger tight for now. I don't think you need too much because they're they've got little points in them, so they dig into the pole. You don't want to strip them out either. So this pole, metal pole here in this mount that I have, I got it from Lowe's. It's their BK structural steel. I just go to Lowe's website and search for structural steel pipe, and this is the 1¼ steel pipe. And actually, the inner diameter of the 1¼ steel pipe is really perfect for this connection right here for the dishy part. If you really could bypass the pole mount, which is this part, and just stick the dish into the metal pipe. But I didn't. I got the pole mount, so I'm going to use it. So, run the wire in. I'm going to tell my wife to go plug it in. Alright, so my wife plugged in the dish, so hopefully here it starts connecting and we'll start looking for satellites. While we're at that, I'm going to tape the wire down. I got some tape in my pocket, and hopefully we can see this baby move a little bit because it's going to have to reconnect. Although it is really close to where it was, I'm guessing it'll have to move a little bit. And it really doesn't matter the orientation of the dish. The mechanisms, the motors can move any way around the pole. Pretty nifty device. Now I'm using the check for obstructions, and at this elevation, the only thing is right over here. There's a little tree. It's kind of just on the bottom hair of it, and the circle moves around enough. Those trees are fine. So I don't know if we'll have too many issues with it being this low. Before, of course, it's going to get a little more above that tree. Alright, it says it's online and it has good connection. It obviously didn't even move. So, we can look here. I don't know if you can see the app or not. It's connected. So, we'll run it like this for a couple days and see how stable the connection is. That's the only way we can experiment to see really. I mean, you can guess based on what the app says, but how accurate is that too? Every cell phone's different. So we'll see how it works. I don't know if I even moved it at all. I might have, and we'll go from there. The dish material it's actually smooth. I'm not going to stick my hand on it right now because it's receiving internet. The water kind of beads up on it as it rains, as you can see. And then here's it's actually making noise. There's my pole connection. Just goes into the roof mount on the ground, a little flange. Little T there, and it sticks up maybe 3 or 4 feet above my roof peak. Let's talk about some tips and tricks with Starlink. There's not many. It's pretty much self-sustainable, but I use it every day, of course, every work day, Monday through Friday, and then the kids use it on the weekend. And I have experience using it daily like that I've had to restart it. By restarting, I mean go and unplug the power block for a couple minutes, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and then plug it back in. I'd have to do a power cycle at least once a week, maybe twice a week. It's not too often, And I think what's happening is there's software updates that possibly need to be re-engaged when you do a hard power cycle like that. Kind of like restarting a computer almost. I found that that has really improved my experience overall. Number 2, utilize the app on your phone, the Starlink app. The Starlink app, there's tons of stuff in the app. There's the statistics, and actually the statistics is also available, if you didn't know it, on a PC that's connected. You can connect it into the statistics of the Starlink system by dialing one at the, like on a web or a browser. You can do 192.168.100.1, and that'll take you to the statistics of the connection of Starlink. And that has, I usually like to use that for if I'm in a meeting and I can sense instability, I'll have the statistics open and kind of keep an eye on what's going on, so if I know I've got an outage or not. Other in the app also, there's you can use a check for obstructions tool to kind of look towards the sky and see if you are obstructed at all. There's FAQs. You can contact support with the app, so it's good to have it. Now, the key thing is you can have the app, but to be able to connect in the Starlink system using the app, I think I've had troubles if the Starlink router is not in the system. If you're using an aftermarket router, it sometimes might not be able to get connected. So what I have is I've got the Starlink router in my basement, and then I've got everything else coming out of that. Number 3, and I'll show this a little bit later, is there's some websites out there that kind of track the location of the satellites, and one of them is https satellitemap.space. That's the website, and that helps. You can see where all the ground stations are at. You can see where all the satellites are at, see where the satellite trains are at, and it's pretty cool to see that and see how things are flowing. And it's been noticeable in the last 3-4 months how many more satellites are actually up there, and of course they're launching all the time. So it's kind of cool to see, and I can really tell that the United States is kind of more engulfed in green circles now with that coverage. Some problems that we've had. We didn't have too many heavy snowstorms this last winter. We had one day it snowed really heavily for about an hour, and during that hour I had consistent connection issues. And even with the hard restarts, unplugging it, plugging back in, the connection would drop out. And I actually went up on the roof, even though there was 16 inches of snow on the roof. I went up there and just double checked the dish, and the dish was completely clean. It was the interference between the dish and the satellites that were causing issues. Heavy snowfall in the atmosphere, big cloud banks in the atmosphere caused the connection issues that I was having. And that was just one day, the whole winter, that I had those issues with that heavy snowstorm. Sometimes you can get a rainstorm coming through. You can see on the app or the statistics the connection isn't as stable, but you don't really lose speed too much. A heavier snowstorm, you can lose a little bit of speed, but you still have, compared to my DSL, the speed is awesome. So that's some of the issues with the weather. I'd imagine if we get one of those really big, heavy thunderstorms, we lose connection with like Dish Network TV when a big thunderstorm is rolling in. You get these really tall cloud banks. They'll lose connection. But I'd imagine that'll be very similar with Starlink. We get a big, heavy thunderstorm in the middle of the summer. We'll probably lose connection for a little bit. We can live with that. We don't need satellite internet all the time. Another issues that we had early on, for the first 2 months, and I mentioned this when I was on the roof, where there was quite a few downtimes that would occur, like during my teleconferences and things in my meetings. It was more prevalent in the first 2 to 3 months of having Starlink installed, and I'd imagine for people that are as the service moves south into the United States or wherever else in the world, I'd imagine that you might encounter those downtimes. Satellites might the satellite coverage might not be as dense as it is here now, because here the satellites are kind of rolling right over top of Wisconsin, and then the northern part of the United States and southern Canada, when the orbits kind of naturally all congregate right over top of this area. So that brings up that satellite density is much greater up here compared to maybe Florida or Texas or something like that. So I'd imagine if as beta coverage starts moving south, those there may be intermittent outages because of the satellite coverage isn't as dense as it will be at some point. But for us, the downtime was more prevalent in the first 2 to 3 months because of, I'd imagine, software updates and changes and things like that. So they were always constantly resetting, probably I imagine restarting the software and things like that. So that's pretty much it for tips and tricks and problems. We'll go inside here in a little while, tomorrow probably, and do some screen caps of some speed tests that we've run and kind of look at my history of speed tests on my computer through using the speed test app from December up until today. You can really see a difference in the fluctuation of what the speed tests are, and then the increase that I've gotten in the last 2 weeks too. So stick around.
Okay, let's check out what's available for speed testing and kind of viewing the Starlink system, and then also check out the statistics that's available on a computer. So this website here, satellitemap.space, is a useful tool to kind of give you an idea of what the Starlink system looks like. We can see here over the United States, the satellites are constantly moving. The green circles are theoretical areas that each satellite can serve. So 7AF here moving across is highlighted by this green circle here. And you can see now here's a satellite train coming across south of Alaska. That's recently launched satellites that are moving around and will soon start dispersing out into a more organized orbit. You can see some of them are up ahead here on the same path, these yellow ones here. This is a pretty cool tool just to be able to see what's going on. I do know they have some satellites that are going over on a polar orbit at the moment. They must not be actually going over the poles at this time, but there are polar orbited satellites too. Another tool that you can access is the statistics. This is available on the app for Starlink, and then also here it is. You can access it through a web browser. To access it through a web browser, 192.168.100.1, and that IP address is available in the FAQ for Starlink. You can see here, this is my current statistics as of today. This is after lowering the Starlink on the roof mount to the little shorter version. Overall, the last 24 hours, I've had 2 minutes of downtime, which is not bad at all. Ping success is pretty average. Average latency, download usage. This is what's currently being used. You can see I did a speed test about 5 minutes ago, down and up. And of course, latency increases as you upload. And then here's the satellite connection quality, I guess they call it. So let's look at some speed tests. I do speed tests quite often, 20 to 30 a month, I think. So I've been kind of keeping track. But we can do a live one right now. One thing to know about with Starlink is right now the location services are kind of messed up a little bit. I must have a lower connection right now. So I just did one. It was 200 some megabits per second. Right now, as you can see, it's going to a Chicago server, and when you go and log on, let's say to Home Depot or Menards or any website that uses location services, it'll usually put me, for instance, down in Chicago. It'll say access the Chicago store or something like that. It's kind of annoying. I know I contacted their support on it, and they said that they're working on that issue, but it's just kind of something you got to deal with. So every time you're going shopping or going on a website that has a physical store, you got to make sure you update your zip code in there so that it's going to a relevant store. I'll do another one here. Just something to be aware of. And my ping here is a little bit higher today, but it may or may not have other computers uploading things at this time, so it varies between 20 to 30. See, we're jumping up a little bit higher now. After the speed test, we'll look at my history of speed tests and how things have changed over the last 4 months since I've been using it. All right, so using the speed test app, you can actually go and download there's past speed tests. You can look at the history here. Here's my history of speed tests that I've done. And if I go in, look in my Excel file, we can see here's my speed test that I've done with Starlink since I got it running December 17th of 2020. For the most part, it's been pretty static between the 170, 150, and actually it was a little bit higher first, and it looks like it dropped kind of average for a while, and now it's slowly picking back up. And you can really see this in the actual numbers. You can see here on the download side, since about March 24th, even before that a little bit, we've had some pretty high speeds. Here's a 314, a 306, 329, and a lot of 200s for standard download. On the upper ones, the pings or latencies are a little bit higher, and then some other ones are lower. And I can't guarantee this. We don't have. This isn't the only PC that's connected. I have a weather station that's always uploading too, so that might affect latency a little bit. Upload speeds are nice as well. Here's a 31. Here's a 29. Some 9s. I mean, they vary quite a bit, but you can really tell that there must have been a software change between December and January, and then it got a little bit lower speeds here from middle of January to middle of February, and some upper ones here early March, and then it slowed down for me for a little bit, and then it just dramatically increased here the last 2 weeks as far as overall max speed goes. As I discussed earlier, it's very important to have that clear space available to minimize any obstructions and make sure you have the best connection possible. And seeing the live Starlink map, you can really tell that how things are moving over top of us. And here's actually an open spot for me right now. Let's see if I don't know if this one AW is active or not. So based on my most recent speed test results and my testing, and I've been using it for now a couple days with the lowered satellite dish. I think I'm probably going to end up keeping it at this point, but we'll see. As time goes on, we'll see if I notice any issues with the satellite dish a little bit lower on my roof. I don't have any connection issues. It says it's not obstructed, and you can see that in the Starlink statistics as well. There it is. And you can see the ping success is really good, and there's no downtime in the last 24 hours. So I think at this point I'm going to end up keeping the Starlink at the lower level, but we may adjust it in the future too.
All right, as I stand out here on this gorgeous day in the wood yard, I'm going to end this video here. I kept it clear and concise. Not really. It's probably one of the longer videos I've had since the RV remodel video. So I'm going to make this conclusion fast. If you like this video, give it a like, maybe subscribe to my channel, thumbs up, all the fun stuff. Leave a comment. What do you think? Do you have Starlink? How is it doing for you? I'd like to hear those comments from you. So let me know, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.